Our speaker today has an interesting background because he's been working in herbs since he was 7 years old. And I don't know how old he is, but it's got to be a few years. So his name is Dylan Elmer. His parents started Wild Harvest. That's the products we're looking at. And he's been doing everything that you would do at an herb farm. Growing, weeding, brewing them up. And he's going to explain how that's done because it's really an interesting thing that they do. So 7 years old, 40 acres of organic farm. It's really quite an interesting business and an agricultural business. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce them. Dylan, you take over.
Thank you. You guys all hear me good? Good. All right, on. Perfect. Well, I'm Dylan. I've been with Oregon's Wild Harvest my whole life. My family started. My parents started it over 30 years ago now. So, yeah. So I'm going to talk to you guys about what we do and farming, processing, what makes our products unique. So thank you guys all for being here. I know you guys all have stuff going on, and for you guys to take time out of your Saturday, it's really cool. I really appreciate you. In this industry, we've seen a lot of change. We have major players now, right? We've got corporations, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, and we're still family owned, 100% family owned, and that's really important. No outside investors. Everything we make goes right back into Oregon's Wild Harvest. So without further ado, I will walk you guys through a little bit of our history, talk about some really cool products that we carry, and all that good stuff. But first, my parents, who started it 30 years ago. So you can see here, my dad, farmer, and my mom, the businesswoman, and that's really how it started and how it's gone for 30 years. So we started in Sandy. So Sandy is just outside Portland, about 45 minutes east of Portland in the foothills of Mount Hood. We started on a 40-acre farm. We certified it organic in 1994 and certified this farm biodynamic in 2009. And I'm going to discuss biodynamic farming, regenerative farming here in a minute. But you guys can see here, we got some beautiful valerian growing. You see that horse barn there? And just behind it, there's a house. And attached to that house is the garage. And that's where we were processing these herbs, taking them right out of the fields, taking them into that garage, and mainly making a lot of extracts, because you can imagine making extracts pretty straightforward. You take your fresh herb, you put it into the alcohol, you let it sit for about a month, press, filter, put it in a bottle, you're good to go. Whereas with capsules, you got to take the herb out, you dry it, you mill it, then you encapsulate it, and encapsulation machines, they're not cheap, so there's a lot of investment to get into the capsule side. So when we started, we were doing a lot more extracts, and today we do more capsules, but we have an awesome extract line, and we're going to talk more about those coming up. So on this farm, you can see my dad up there. He's in some feverfew, echinacea there. My brother in the calendula and the ginkgo. You can see down in the lower left-hand corner there, that's golden seal. So golden seal, it grows on the forest floor. No direct sunlight for golden seal. You can see that shade cloth right over top, and that protects the golden seal because any direct sunlight, that's going to burn that plant right up and kills it. So golden seal, really cool herb. Great for this time of the year, cold and flu, really good for the mucous membranes. So our name, Oregon's Wild Harvest, how did we get that name? Well, when we started out, we were on 40 acres, and we were farming, and we had a handful of herbs that we were growing on that farm, but we were also going out wildcrafting. So we would go out on the Columbia River and harvest nettle. We would go up on Mount Hood and harvest Oregon grape, western red cedar. And we would go up north of Spokane, right on the Canadian border, and harvest this little yellow flower right here. And that's St. John's wort. And St. John's wort, it grows all over the hills up north of Spokane. And so every 4th of July, my brothers, my dad, myself, a group of anywhere from 12 to 20 harvesters would go up and camp out for 2 to 4 weeks harvesting this plant right here. And you can see this beautiful yellow flower and these little yellow buds. And you see my dad's finger there, and it's red. And when you pinch those little yellow buds, it bleeds a beautiful red color, just like his finger. And that's where the hypericin is found. So that's where the medicine is found, in that plant. So when we talk about peak potency, you only have about 5 days to harvest St. John's wort, because those buds open up and then it flowers. And that flower, as soon as that flower opens up, all that liquid dries up and the hypericin levels nosedive. So you got to harvest that St. John's wort peak potency. You got about 5 days. So wild crafting, Oregon's Wild Harvest, that's where we got our name. Today, and you're going to see here in a second, we have a much larger farm and we're growing a lot more herbs. So we moved. We moved from Sandy to Culver, so this isn't our current farm, but we went to a 150-acre farm, certified this organic and biodynamic as well. And you can see the landscape changes drastically, right? So that last slide you saw was on the west side of the Cascade Mountain Range, and this is the Three Sisters. And just to the left of that, there's Mount Bachelor. To the right of these, you got Mount Jefferson, Mount Hood. You've got all kinds of mountains. And that Cascade Mountain Range, that moisture comes off that ocean, off the Pacific, dumps all that rain in the valley, Portland area, Eugene, gets a ton of rain, pushes right up against those mountains, and it drops all that moisture. And over here on this side of the mountain, on the east side of the Cascade Mountain Range, it's high desert, so we don't get a lot of moisture. So completely different climate, and we had to adapt. So it's pretty darn cool though, because we're able to grow some really cool herbs that we weren't able to grow over on the other side of the mountain. And one of them, you guys have a couple there, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, a traditional Ayurvedic herb, likes really hot, humid weather. It's traditionally grown in India, right? We're able to grow it here in the high desert. I'm going to talk more about ashwagandha, but the freezing becomes the real obstacle for high desert farming, and because our freezing season can go right into June, and it starts right now. So we got to be very mindful of that. I include this slide because we have a really great team. It's a family company, but there's a lot of families that contribute to Oregon's Wild Harvest. And down in the lower left-hand corner, you can see Matthew. He's been our quality director for 20 years now. Nate's been with us, Director of Operations, for over 25 years. Ruta, right here in the middle, Sean knows Ruta. She's awesome. She's been with us for over 20 years. So there's a lot of families. John in the middle, I include John because his wife also works at the company. So they both work at Oregon's Wild Harvest together. Joanne up there in the upper left-hand corner, she's the one that develops these great formulas that we're going to talk about, and there's a lot that goes into that, and Joe's integral to that process. You can see my brother, my dad, my niece, my cousin. So this is very much a family company, again 100% family owned. So we were there for 6 years, and then we moved to this farm, our current farm. So this is a 600-acre certified organic, certified biodynamic farm. And I'll talk a little bit about biodynamic, and we're going to talk a lot about it. But what that means is this farm is self-sustaining. We don't have outside inputs. We don't bring in beehives. If you come out to our farm, we'd love to have all you guys out to the farm. We don't have a bunch of white boxes. Our bees live right on the farm. Part of Demeter certified biodynamic is you have to leave at least 10% of the farm in its natural state. And what that means is there's an area that's undisturbed, untouched. And you can see this river. This is called the Crooked River. You can see why it gets its name, Crooked River. It's very crooked. So that river just above it, that's a part of our farm. But you can see we're not farming. And what that is that area is left untouched, and that's a place for the birds and the bees to call home. That's undisturbed. So our pollinators live right on the farm. They make their home on our farm. We don't have to bring in beehives. You can see all this beautiful green, these green fields. That's alfalfa. So we're growing lots of alfalfa, and the reason we're growing lots of alfalfa is because we have lots of livestock on the farm. Just below that green there, you can see, and you guys are going to get a much better view here in the next slide, but this is very two-dimensional, but we're in a valley, and you can see just below that green there, that's where the livestock hangs out. So we grow biodynamic alfalfa, we feed it to our livestock, and then we take that manure from the livestock and we spread it over those fields. So our livestock we do not raise them for slaughter. Our livestock, we just want them for the manure. So we want that manure because we're not bringing in outside manure. We're creating it right on the farm. Again, this is a 100% self-sustaining farm. It's old-fashioned farming, right? This isn't just a mass commercial farm. This is a living ecosystem, and that's what biodynamic farming is all about, is a living ecosystem. It's people, it's the planet, it's the animals, it's the insects, all together that create this. Next slide here, so let's see what our farm looks like in three-dimensional view. So Crooked River, just in the back there, that is where the livestock hangs out I was talking about. So you can kind of get a view of what we're talking about here. So on this farm, we grow all kinds of herbs, about 40 different herbs on this farm. Some of them we just want the flowers, some we want the tops, some we want the roots, and some we want the whole plant, like echinacea. Echinacea will come through and we'll harvest those flowers and those tops, and then we'll come through and harvest those roots. Some of these plants we just want one part, some we want the whole thing. Again, about 40 different herbs growing on this farm here in Central Oregon. Here's some of them right here. So ashwagandha, you guys have some right there. The herbs in that bottle of muscle relax are valerian and skullcap. We're growing it right on the farm. Again, really cool herbs, holy basil, ashwagandha, traditional Ayurvedic herbs growing right here in Central Oregon. This company is very much a company that wants to further plant medicine. We do this because we love what we do. We want to take care of folks. We want to provide the best plant medicine available. Gotu kola, that's one herb that we grow on the farm, but we're not growing it we don't have a Gotu kola product. We're not growing it for sales. We actually grow Gotu kola for OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University, and they're doing a research study on Gotu kola helping with brain plaque, Alzheimer's, dementia. We grow the herb for that research study. So we are always trying to further plant medicine forward. If you go on the NIH, you'll see several photos provided by Oregon's Wild Harvest, ashwagandha being one of them. We provide the documentation, the identity, the species for these different plants. Again, we want to further plant medicine forward. Rudolf Steiner, this is the guy that started biodynamic farming. And so he was an Austrian scientist over 100 years ago, really smart guy, and he was tasked with a problem. In Europe, they were experiencing crop shortages, crop failures. So what he was tasked with was figuring out why and solving the problem. So what he found was, even back then, they may not have been using as many chemicals as we use today, but you can still pull too much out of the ground, and if you're not putting enough in, it becomes barren. It becomes soil that's not able to produce. So what he developed was different practices and methods that ended up becoming biodynamic farming. And we've talked about a couple of them. You leave the farm in its natural state, at least 10%. We've got some really cool stuff with you can see our livestock. We've got our Texas Longhorns. We're creating the manure right on our farm. A lot of folks will ask if they've heard of biodynamic farming. They'll ask, do you do that horn thing? And we do that horn thing, and you can see it right there. My dad and brother, they're burying horns. So you take those horns, they're empty, you fill them with manure, you bury them for the winter, you dig them up in the spring, and what you see there right there, that's a concentrated manure. So you take out that concentrated manure, you add it to water, and you spray it over the fields. And so I include that photo up there up top because it's a great representative of that. This farm is 100% biodynamic. It's not just a corner that, we don't have a little 2-acre plot that we're doing this for marketing purposes. We know the importance of regenerative farming. And so this farm is 100% biodynamic. So some other fun stuff when it comes to biodynamic farming. And Regenerative Organic Alliance is somewhat new. I believe they came around in 2017. And they've been the regenerative organic certification. I'm sure you guys have seen it on bottles. They've really shone a light on regenerative farming. And so biodynamic is regenerative farming, and where the parallel is cover crops. And actually, when you apply for the regenerative organic certification, your certification level is based on how much of the farm you use cover crops on. And so cover crops are really important. So anytime you're not using a field, you're letting that field rest, but you're letting it rest, you're planting a nutrient-dense plant. So we do barley, oats milky tops is another really good one. So what you do is, let's say that field right there, just down here, we just harvested. So then you just harvested ashwagandha, St. John's wort, whatever it is. Well, now you have an empty field. You come back through and you plant that nutrient-dense plant there. So come through, you plant your oats milky tops, and you let that grow. And you let that grow until you want to use that crop again. And then once you want to use that crop again, you come through and you till all that organic material, all that plant material, you till it back under into the soil, and you disc it and you break it up and you make it into very small nutrients, so that when you come through and plant your herbs on top, they have all the nutrients provided from that nutrient-dense cover crop. So that's really important to regenerative farming. Also, you can imagine, instead of cover crop, that field would just be dirt blowing in the wind. Now you have a crop of plants that are converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. So you can imagine if every farm did cover crops, what that could be doing for us on our planet, right? So this is really important, another really important part of regenerative farming. This farm was actually it's great because these days it's really difficult to find a farm that hasn't been sprayed, there hasn't been chemicals used on it. That's so hard to find these days because most farms use chemicals of some sort. But this farm was actually a horse farm, and they were just raising horses, and they were growing alfalfa and hay, and they weren't using chemicals. So this is very untouched soil. The one part of the farm that wasn't so great was our irrigation. So you can see up top there in the upper left-hand corner, that's flood irrigation. All that is you just have a bunch of water lines running in the field, and you just turn on the spigot. And you turn on that spigot and you let them flood for days. And what that does is it floods out the insects and the animals living in the field. You're using up a ton of water. A lot of it evaporates because you're just flooding. So we actually have been converting this farm through investments. We've always invested back in the company. We've actually gotten some grants from the state of Oregon to convert our farm from flood irrigation to overhead irrigation. You can see in the lower left-hand corner there, that's overhead irrigation. Uses a lot less water. It doesn't flood out the insects and the animals that live in the fields. And this is just a much better method of watering the plants. So our farm has been converted to overhead irrigation. Right now we are doing about, herbs-wise, I would say about 150 acres of the farm is herbs, another 200 acres of alfalfa right now, and then we have probably about 150 acres that are we're not using. Now some of that is those fields that you guys I showed you guys earlier that you leave untouched, and we will leave part of the farm untouched, but we are converting a lot of this farm, the whole farm, into overhead irrigation. You can see down here our beautiful livestock, our cows, our Texas Longhorns. Those guys are ornery. They'll do the front kicking of the leg and lower their head down, and the horns on those guys are huge. They're massive. So you don't want to mess around with those guys, but they do produce some great manure. And you can see that right down here. This is our manure pile. Now this is one manure pile. We have, I believe, 4 right now. And so we don't just take it straight from the cows to those fields. We want that manure to break down. So you can see there is all that steam coming off that manure pile. So what's happening inside there is bacteria is breaking down those nutrients into smaller nutrients. And so what we do is, you can see that tractor with a little upside down U that implement will just drive that right over that manure pile, and it'll take all the stuff on the inside, because it's getting to about 160, 180 degrees inside there, very hot. So you're taking the stuff on the inside that's all nice and broken down and putting that on the outside, and the stuff on the outside that needs to break down goes on the inside so it can get nice and hot and you get that breakdown. And then we'll add, well, there's more to it actually. So our manure pile isn't just manure. We actually add back nutrient-dense herbs. This is another part of biodynamic farming where you enhance your manure. So we'll add back herbs like valerian and nettle. Nettle is very nutrient-dense. It likes to pull stuff like silica from the soil, minerals. A lot of folks will drink nettle tea because it's so nutrient-dense. We add that back to our manure pile. Again, we want to enhance it. We want more nutrients. We want to provide our plants all the nutrients that they need to thrive. So furry and feathered friends, part of biodynamic farming is you have livestock on the farm, and we have a lot of it. We've got cows, we've got goats, those are Nigerian dwarf goats over there. We've got some sheep as well, horses. Obviously, we have to have the cat to take care of the mice, right? They're in the horse barn. They got to take care of the mice in the horse barn. And we've got dogs and chickens. So again, biodynamic farming, it's a live ecosystem, and there's a lot that goes into it. This is our biodynamic herbal tonic line, and it's a really cool line because, well, first, we're growing all the herbs right on that farm. So we have some really cool combos. And the alcohol that's used in these. So a lot of these herbs that are used in these products here, like Sleep Better and the Must Relax, ashwagandha, you actually have a biodynamic ashwagandha over there as well. We grow them biodynamically. It's not like we have, hey, we're only going to need a quarter of that echinacea crop to be biodynamic, and the rest, 3/4, we're not doing biodynamically. We're doing all the same methods, all the same practices for the whole farm and all these herbs. But to have that Demeter certification, it's that little green one right up there, right next to the USDA, just to the right of the USDA. That Demeter certification, to have it, it has to be 100% biodynamic. So you could put all the biodynamic herbs in those capsules, but the capsules aren't biodynamic, and there's no biodynamic capsules available, just a heads up. It's not like we're not creating biodynamic encapsulated products. There is no biodynamic capsules out there, but there is biodynamic grape alcohol out there. So we were able to get some biodynamic grape alcohol grown in California. So all the grapes are grown in California, biodynamically grown, and we blend them with our herbs, biodynamically grown, and you have a biodynamic tonic line, and it's a great line. So we've got our singles, right? Our valerian, our ashwagandha, holy basil, again, those traditional Ayurvedic herbs, lemon balm, great for relaxation, astragalus, that's my dad's favorite, immune system health. Actually, there's some research talking about astragalus helping with telomere repair, aging process. So saw logs, that's our combination for sleep. So it's our valerian, our passion flower, lemon balm, traditional sleeping herbs, relaxation herbs. That's an awesome formula. I actually don't travel without that formula. Count to Zen, our adrenal formula, such a cool one. Holy basil, ashwagandha, astragalus, licorice, so important. One of the more underrated herbs out there, but has so many different applications. We've got our namaste, that's our relaxation combo, but not sleep. So saw logs is for sleep. Namaste is awesome for anxiety, quite honestly. Whenever I feel angst coming on, I take my namaste because it's got lemon balm in there, passion flower, skullcap, and oats milky tops. All traditional relaxation herbs, but just to bring you down herbs, not herbs that are going to make you drowsy, just calm you down a bit. This line is all in alcohol, which is really important for herbs like the saw logs, especially. Namaste is another one because alcohol is going to be absorbed in the stomach. When you guys take a shot or a beer, whatever, any type of alcohol, you start feeling it pretty quickly. And that's because it absorbs in the stomach. Whereas with capsules, encapsulated line, that's got to get to the small intestines before it's absorbed. So you're talking with extracts, 10 minutes before you start noticing something. Whereas with capsules, about an hour. So really cool. Namaste to the rescue. That's our elderberry and echinacea blend. An awesome, awesome blend. Going to help with that immune system. Keep in mind with elderberry and echinacea, these are herbs that you want to take during your illness or when you feel an illness coming on, because it's going to start that immune system. It's going to activate it, and it's going to turn it on and get it going. But you don't want that all the time, right? So astragalus is your option if you're looking for long-term immune support, a daily long-term immune support supplement. That's going to be your astragalus. Now, astragalus and echinacea and elderberry are kind of opposites, because as soon as you start feeling sick or you are sick, you want to discontinue astragalus and you want to get over to those herbs like echinacea and elderberry that are going to turn that immune system on quickly and start fighting that illness. So astragalus is the one you take when you're not feeling sick to prevent the sickness. The to the rescue elderberry echinacea combo, that's what you're going to want to take when you feel the sickness. Liver love. Liver love is an awesome combination. Milk thistle dandelion combo. It's our one of our best selling. It might be our number 2 best selling. Ashwagandha is number 1, and then number 2 is our milk thistle dandelion, and that's a combination of milk thistle, dandelion, artichoke, and burdock, which is the same combination of liver love. This is just the extract version. And all great herbs. I'm going to talk more about these individual herbs coming up. But this is our biodynamic herbal tonic line, grown right on our farm. Again, using biodynamic grape alcohol. All right, so the goal of Oregon's Wild Harvest from day one has been vertical integration, from seed to bottle, controlling the process. My dad, for the longest time, said the most difficult part about this company, an herbal supplement company, is eventually it's going to be really, really difficult to find quality raw material. There's just, I would say these days, as the demand goes up, as there's more players in the game, as there's a lot of money involved, the quality tends to go down because the market's flooded with, inferior herbs, lots of powders, old herbs. So really, the goal of this company and why we started on 40 acres to 150 acres to 600 acres is we want to control from seed to bottle as many of these herbs as we can. So that's not possible without our H2A team. And so the H2A program is actually a seasonal migrant program for workers. So you've got workers it's a program between the US and the Mexican government for our seasonal farm workers. And this wasn't a problem for the first 20 years or so. When we were in Sandy, we were in the Portland metro area. We had a lot of folks to hire from. We moved to rural central Oregon, and I grew up on a farm. I grew up on that first photo you guys saw of our first farm. That's where I grew up. So grew up on the tractor every summer. I spent one summer literally just picking up rocks and throwing them in the bucket of the tractor, and then going and dumping that bucket, and then just doing that non-stop all day every day, because you got to get the rocks out of the fields before you can use it, right? So this is hard work, and it's not unheard of where someone shows up for the first day of work, goes to lunch, and then you just never see him again. And that has happened. And it makes it very difficult because we are on a tight schedule. I mentioned it earlier, but our biggest obstacle is the freeze, right? We got to get the herbs in the ground like ashwagandha, holy basil. We got to get them in right after the last freeze of this season. And we got to get them out of the ground before the first freeze of the season. So, and there's a lot that goes into it. We still weed by hand, right? So up here in the right-hand corner, you can see that hoe. That's how we're doing it. So this H2A program is awesome. So these guys, we built them a house right on the farm, so they live right on the farm. This is our 4th year of the H2A program. We started with 5. This year we had 10. So that original 5 came back up, and we had 5 new additional workers. So their hourly pay is negotiated. WAFLA comes out 3 times to inspect your facilities, to inspect the house, to make sure that you provide adequate water out in the fields. We actually will pull these guys if the UV index gets too high. So it's awesome. It's expensive, but we can't do it without these guys. So so important. And you can see here, so right up there, that's a greenhouse. We've got 3 of them. We're building a 4th right now, so we'll have 4 greenhouses next year. And as soon as I would say about March comes along, we're loading those greenhouses. So we're taking flats and we're putting seeds in the flats, and then we're loading them up. And we start loading in March. And the first planting is nettle, and that's usually around May. So they'll be in there for some of these guys will be in there for 3 months, like our ashwagandha and our holy basils, where we got to start them early, and we got to get them to a nice height before we put them in the ground. And you can actually see right down there in the lower left-hand corner, that's a little ashwagandha seedling there. So you can see the seeds, and then that's a seedling, and you can see the guys right on the back of the tractor sitting down. This is an aerial view, so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on there. So they're sitting down, and they're taking one seedling, and in between their legs it's almost like a little turret. I believe it's 8 slots, and they take one seedling and drop it into each one of those slots, and then that little turret shoots it into the ground, and these guys are coming behind there just to make sure that it's packed in there nice and tight. So that's how the planting process goes, and that'll start in May. And we actually didn't plant our ashwagandha until July. So May, June, July is spent in these fields here just planting. And then as soon as you plant, you got to start weeding. So it's just a non-stop. Every day it's, hey, what are we going to be doing today? We got to plant in the morning. We got to go weed in the afternoon. You know, that's how the days go. So this is, lots of labor goes into this. So that's spring and early summer. And then summer comes around, it's time to harvest, right? So summer and fall, that's your typical harvesting time. But we have one plant that we harvest in spring, and that's actually nettle. So you can see that right in the middle there. That's a big field of nettle, and they're all covered up because you guys know nettle is stinging nettle.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you guys know what nettle is, stinging nettle, and you can see they're all nice and covered up, and it turns out that it's a great time of the year to harvest because you can bundle up and make sure that you don't get stung and you don't get too hot, right? So it does get warm out there in the summertime, but that's our first harvest. But most of these herbs we're harvesting in the summer and fall, like we've got calendula there, that we'll do that usually about end of July, and you can see they're coming through and they're harvesting, and you can see just beyond them there's no yellow flowers, right? Well, as soon as you pop those flowers off, there's a bunch of buds right underneath those flowers. So as soon as you pop those flowers off, within about 3 days, that field's full of flowers again. So we'll do probably about 5 harvests of our calendula, and you can see it's labor intensive. It's just popping those tops off. So you can see up here this tractor, and it's cutting down the tops. So there's a reason for that. You can see down here, this is an astragalus root. That's probably year 3 or year 4 astragalus. It's pretty darn mature. Astragalus needs to be in the ground for at least 3 to 4 years before you can harvest. Now some of these herbs are in the ground for a few months, like our ashwagandha. Astragalus is in the ground for about 4 years. And there's a couple key constituents in there. There's polysaccharides and there's astragalosides that are in astragalus. And so first year astragalus is really high in polysaccharides and very low in astragalosides. And then you start to balance, and by year 2 it's getting closer and closer. By year 3 and 4 you've got a nice balance of polysaccharides and astragalosides. So that's the reason why astragalus is one that you leave in the ground for a long time. And honestly, if you were to pull up astragalus after 1 year in the ground, it's very stringy. It's very stringy, like little noodles. So it's just not, it's not an herb that you harvest within a year or 2. So that happens, but you can see we're coming through and we're chopping the tops off that. And there's a reason for that, because on our root herbs, we want to have the energy from the plant go down to the root. We want growth in the root. We don't want those the energy going into flowering and seeds, because you're taking that energy and it's not going to the root. We want the root to get bigger. So we come through before the plant starts to flower and we chop those tops off. And so that energy starts going back into the ground. But we always leave part of our crop to go to seed, because in 2025 we got to be thinking about 2026. And I can tell you, seeds are hard to come by and they're very expensive. 1 pound of ashwagandha seeds is about $3,000. So if you guys want to get into a secondary market, get into the seed game, because there's a demand there. But we supply our own seeds, so we always have to be thinking about the future, right? So we always let part of our crop go to seed. About 1/8 to 1/4 of an acre. It doesn't take much. They produce lots of seeds. You can see the astragalus there. And something unique about astragalus, on our astragalus containing products, we'll actually note if you are allergic to peanuts, to use with caution, because astragalus is actually a part of the legume family, and you can see those little bean pods up there. So astragalus, we process all of our material in a nut-free, allergen-free facility, but we do note that because it is in the same family as peanuts. So we let part of our crop go to seed for every single crop, but there's one crop that we let go completely to seed, and you can see right here, that's milk thistle. And you can see those little white tops, and that's the part of the plant that contains the seeds. So milk thistle, I've got a picture you guys are going to see, but it can get really tall. It can get like 6-7 feet tall. And it's a big plant that produces just a little bit of seeds. You can see just those little white tops. That's the only part of the plant that has those seeds. So we got to go through and pop those little tops off. That's what that machine does, and it goes through and it basically just breaks them apart and shakes out the seed and discards the rest. So this crop, milk thistle, is our largest crop by acreage, because big plants, small yield. So we do about 40 acres of milk thistle. We do about 20 acres of ashwagandha. We do about 20 acres of nettle. So we have some big crops, but milk thistle takes the cake for that, for sure. Okay, so now you guys have seen what we do in the fields. You guys see the farming process. So right on the farm, we have this really cool wash line. And this wash line is just using water. And you can see here, harvesting some nettle, that's some ashwagandha root. And this wash line is just a water bath with some water sprayers, drops into another water bath, agitates it. And all you're doing is you're just shaking off the dirt and any bugs, anything that's on the plant material, it's just getting rinsed off. And so it comes off this wash line, and we're loading them into bags here. This is nettle, and I'll talk about nettle in a second, but I'll say about 90% of the herbs that come off this wash line go right into a dryer. So you can see right back behind there, that's actually a dryer hookup. And we've got several of them. So all of our dryers are basically trailers. So we can move the trailer, back it right up to the line, load it up, and then go hook it right up to that dryer. And it blows the hot air, about 108 degrees for 48 to 72 hours, depending if it's a leaf or a root or a flower. So about 90% will go into the dryers. That other 10% will go fresh right into extract. So we'll just take it and put it right into alcohol. It actually goes into a vertical mixer where you grind it up a bit, you kind of chop it up, and then it goes into a barrel, and then will be used for some extracts. And but this plant right here is nettle, and it's actually very unique because, again, you guys know nettle as stinging nettle. And you can see up there in that upper left-hand corner, you can see the sun shining on there, and you can see all those little hairs. That plant is completely covered in little hairs, so when you brush against it, you get a nice little rash of stinging nettle. Well, the part of the plant that we need to keep intact for the allergy response, for the allergy helping response in the body, is those little hairs. So we have to keep those intact. So if you can imagine, if we were to put it right into a dryer, that dryer would burn up those hairs, and we would lose that constituent, that part of the plant that helps humans with allergies. It's ironic, the part that gives you a rash on the outside will actually help you on the inside. So to keep those hairs intact is we have to freeze dry. So we don't have a freeze dryer. They're multiple millions of dollars. So what we do is we load up, we harvested about 30,000 pounds of fresh nettle this year, and we loaded it into 2 freezer trucks, and we shipped it back to Illinois, where it's freeze dried. And the freeze drying process is basically a vacuum, no heat involved. It basically pulls the moisture out of the plant, so it leaves those hairs intact. And this plant is amazing for allergies. I swear by it, especially this time of the year. We've got freeze-dried nettle, all grown on our farm. We have a nettle quercetin combination, which is just nettle and quercetin. And then we have that Allerade formula, which is a really cool formula because it also includes not only quercetin, but NAC, which N-acetylcysteine is going to help break up mucus. So if you're the type that has allergies and you get mucus buildup, that NAC is crucial. So really, really cool plant. Again, I mentioned earlier that we would go harvest this off the Columbia River. We've been using freeze-dried nettle in our line for 30 years. It's one of our original products. So we actually just invested in a blister pack machine, which makes samples. So we're actually going to start having samples of these products in Must Relax. So the first 2 we're doing, just had a meeting a couple days ago talking about doing the freeze-dried and the Must Relax, because those are 2 herbs that work quickly and they work well. Now some of these I'm going to talk more about, but like ashwagandha, you want it to build in your system. You don't just take it and expect immediate results. You want to take these herbs on a continual basis, astragalus. So some of these herbs aren't really a good fit for sample packets, but nettle and Must Relax, awesome. So you guys know all about farming now and how all this stuff's processed, but this is what makes us unique on the shelf. And so there's some really cool stuff that we're doing that's very unique to Oregon's wild harvest. And the first thing I always point out, folks will say, well, what's different between yours and anyone else's? And I'll talk about organic, talk about our capsules, and I'll talk more about that here in a second. But first thing I do is pick up any one of our bottles and flip it around to the other ingredients, because that's really important. No one else is looking out for us but ourselves, right? So we got to be conscious of what we're ingesting, and those other ingredients, that's where they can really fit in a lot of stuff that's not really so good for us. But in our other ingredients, you're going to notice organic poluin, and that's from naturally fermented tapioca starch, and nothing else. And that's across the board. You're not going to find any fillers or flowing agents in Oregon's wild harvest products. So what does that mean? This here is an encapsulation machine. You can see a zoomed out version right there, and you can see a zoomed in version. So during encapsulation, there are some herbs that are easier than others. Beetroot, for example. Beetroot is high in polysaccharides, high in sugars. So as soon as you take beetroot powder and expose it to the air, it starts clumping. It's pulling moisture out of the air and it's clumping together. So what you could do, and what a lot of companies do, is they add in silicon dioxide. And that's an anti-clumping agent. So you take silicon dioxide powder and you mix it in with your herbal powder, and it makes it so it doesn't clump together, and it runs through that machine without any problems. But you end up in that other ingredients, silicon dioxide. So what do? We have to slow our machines down. We slow them down 3, 4 times, sometimes 5 times slower than they could be running. Slow them way down. Allerade, that's another one that's really sticky. And slow the machine way down. And so the reason we're slowing it way down is because our operator is sitting there with a screen, screening out all those clumps. So we got to slow down the machine because he can't feed the powder fast enough into the machine, because you got to screen out those clumps. So this is 100% a quality over quantity game for us. Magnesium stearate. Magnesium stearate is an anti-caking agent. So what happens with this machine, you can see here that powder buildup there. You can see those broken capsules. What will happen is that powder starts sticking to the machine and it starts gumming it up. And when it gums it up, it makes it so that the machine it stops working properly. So what a lot of companies do is they use something called magnesium stearate. Basically, it looks like motor oil, and it's just, you coat the machine in this oil, this magnesium stearate, and it makes it so that the powder doesn't stick to the machine. It's an anti-caking agent. What we do again, you don't want anything in those other ingredients. So magnesium stearate, when you coat the machine in it, it ends up in those other ingredients. What we have to do is when we start getting that buildup is we got to stop the machine, take it apart, clean it all up, put it back together, start the machine again. So this is so important because those other ingredients are so important. When you look at one of our products, Sleep Better, I mean, that's a bad example because it's not the herb on the front, but what's on the front of the bottle is what's in there and nothing else. So whenever you flip around to the back of any of our products, you're going to see the supplement facts, whatever that herb is or those herbs that are in that product. Go to those other ingredients, it's just going to be the capsule. So that capsule is really cool because there's only one organic capsule on the market, and it's Poulin. There's one other vegetarian capsule on the market, vegan capsule, that's HPMC, goes by cellulose, vegetable cellulose, and that is a tree pulp derived capsule, and it's a heavily chemically produced capsule because you can imagine tree pulp, it's not exactly ingestible for humans. So to get it to a point that it actually is able to be digested, there's lots of chemicals involved. And Oregon Tilth is our certifying body. So the USDA is the USDA organic, but it has certifying bodies like Oregon Tilth. And they let us know if we were to ever use HPMC capsules, cellulose capsules, vegetable cellulose capsules, we would not be able to label our products organic, and we would have to remove their name from our bottles. So that's, you know, what kind of capsule it is. They want nothing to do with it. So, and it's a lot cheaper. It's about 3 times less than Poulin capsules. Poulin capsules are the most expensive capsules on the market by a long shot. And the reason is because there's no chemicals involved, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it to keep it organic, because when you're talking about, you know, microbes and stuff like that, the easy thing to do is to use a chemical on it, and that eliminates any issues. Whereas with ours, there's just a lot more to it. So the other great thing about Poulin capsules is they are the best oxygen barrier capsules on the market. And that's really important, especially for our products, because we don't use powders. We don't bring in powder. We work with whole herbs, whether it be from our farm. That's a dandelion root up there in the top left, some milk thistle seed in the middle, or whether it be from somewhere else. Down there in the bottom left-hand corner, that's softball meadow berries. And those softball meadow berries come from one part of the world. All the softball meadow in the whole world comes from Florida. That's where all the softball meadow trees are, and that's where we get our softball meadow, our organic berries. Most companies work with powders. You want to bring in powder because it's easy. First off, you can imagine it's a lot less area that it takes up because it's been powdered, it's been condensed, and it's a lot quicker to work with, easier, quicker. So you bring in your powder, you do your testing, whether that be heavy metals, we test for heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides, we test for microbes, we have a E. coli, salmonella, that's our micro lab, aflatoxins, we do all of it. So whatever it is that you're testing for, you just test your powder, and if it checks out, you're good to go. Get it into those capsules, get it in the bottle, you're all done. But when you work with powders, when you bring in powders, you never know what's in that final product. You can test all day long, you're never going to know what's in that powder. So that's why we work with whole herbs. One of the reasons we work with whole herbs. So those are soft meadow berries down there. Last fall, we brought in all of our soft meadow berries for the year. And during this process of cleaning and sorting, which is very unique to us, where we do a full visual inspection of the whole raw material, before it goes into milling, before it goes into encapsulation, we do this visual inspection. And we found last year a peanut shell no bigger than my index fingernail, and we rejected a full year's worth of softball meadow berries last year. So this process, if we were to bring in powder, we would have found that peanut shell right in, or we would have never found that peanut shell, and we would have put it right into a capsule and put it on the shelf and said peanut free or whatever, and it would be in there. So we know exactly what's in our products. Another really important thing when you're talking about whole herbs is as soon as these herbs are powdered, oxidation is starting to occur and degradation starts. So you start losing those oils. Sapamento's full of fatty acids and sterols. It's a very oily berry. As soon as you powder it, you start getting that degradation. So we leave our herbs in their whole form until it's time to go in that capsule. And going back to that capsule, the best oxygen barrier capsule on the market. So let's say we have 10,000 kilos of saw palmetto berries. Well, we only need 2,000 kilos for a run. We'll leave 8,000 berries in their whole form, 8,000 kilos of those berries in their whole form. We'll take out exactly what we need. We mill it, and milling, it's a process, especially with like saw palmetto berries. They're hard as marbles. They're like little rocks. And it's got to go through the mill 5-6 times before you get it into a fine powder. Gets into that fine powder, we go straight to encapsulation and get it into those polyolin capsules for that oxygen barrier. So we're limiting that degradation, we're limiting that oxidation as much as possible by keeping herbs in their whole state, that fresh whole form. Some really cool herbs, talking about, herbs that we aren't able to grow. And these are popular. We just came out with our beetroot about a year ago, and the reason we came out with beetroot is because it was our most popular bulk item, and a lot of folks were asking, why don't you put it into a capsule? We'd love to take it in capsule form. So our beetroot, very unique. It's all organic. Again, you don't have any magnesium or silicon dioxide, magnesium stearate or silicon dioxide in there. And these are North American grown beets. So we're not able to grow beets on our farm. It's a little too dry, a little too desert-like. So we get ours from Canada, and we've been getting our beets from Canada for, we've had bulk for about 20 years. So that's where we've been getting it from for a long time. I would say about 90-something% is coming straight out of China. So most beets these days come straight out of China, whereas ours has always been North American grown, and we note that right on the bottle. Really cool herb because it's going to help with the oxygen flow in the body, helping get oxygen to your muscles. That nitric oxide, beetroot is an awesome nitric oxide supporting herb. Another one that we don't grow, but it's one of our best sellers, and we've had it for a long, long time. And actually, there's been quite a bit of, I would say, more. There's been more focus on cinnamon as it's become more popular, and people are starting to understand the differences. For a long time, we would have to explain the differences between Ceylon cinnamon and cassia cinnamon, also known as Chinese cinnamon. There's a constituent found in cinnamon called coumarin. It's C-O-U-M-A-R-I-N, not to be confused with curcumin. So cinnamon contains coumarin, and coumarin can be really hard on your liver. And cassia has about 10 times more coumarin than Ceylon cinnamon. So Ceylon cinnamon has barely anything, trace amounts, whereas cassia has really high amounts of coumarin. And so you can't take cassia for longer than, I think it's 6 weeks, because of that coumarin buildup in the liver. Whereas with Ceylon cinnamon, you can take it year-round, every single day. And that's really important because it's helping with metabolism, and it's helping with the blood sugar release into the bloodstream. And so a lot of folks that take cinnamon are diabetic, pre-diabetic, very concerned about their sugar levels in their blood. And you want to be able to take it daily, right? So that's where Ceylon cinnamon is so important, because cassia is not able to be taken on a daily basis. Okay, so ashwagandha, that's one we're growing on our farm. You can see my dad there with an ashwagandha plant. I say plant in June and harvest in October. That's under ideal circumstances. We did plant in July this year, and we just harvested that, I believe, last week. So you got to be on it. One freeze will kill this plant. And you can see here, this is what the root looks like. And actually, you can see over there on the left-hand side, those little red berries are produced by ashwagandha. That's what their little berries look like, and that's where the seeds are found. And ashwagandha is a really cool herb because some folks will get an energy boost from it, and some folks will get a calming effect from it. And really what it's doing is it's helping balance the adrenals. It's helping with cortisol levels in the body. So the folks that tend to get a energy boost from it are probably running low, and the folks that get a calming effect from it are probably running high. So it's just helping balance you out. It's a really cool herb. Again, we included a couple of those. That ashwagandha alcohol-free is a new item for us, so that's why we wanted to include that in there for you. And we definitely wanted to include that biodynamic so you guys can say you've tried a Demeter certified biodynamic product. This one down here, this ashwagandha ginkgo, is one of my favorites because it's one of those ones that's the ashwagandha is working on the body, right? The adrenals helping the body, and the ginkgo is helping the mind. And ginkgo helps with blood flow, and it's helping blood flow to those small blood vessels, your little capillaries. So ginkgo is typically associated with brain support because you got a lot of small blood vessels up there, and you need proper blood flow for cognition. So ginkgo is awesome. This combination is one of my favorites. This is just explaining our bottle of ashwagandha. Again, you can look at those other ingredients. It's just the capsule and nothing else. The synergistic approach is one that my dad has always preached. It's not one part of the herb that's working, but multiple parts of the herb that are working within the human body to have the effects that they're having. So synergistic approach. Ours is whole organic ashwagandha and nothing else. So no, we're not using any solvents on our product. It's just the whole herb, the way it's been taken for a long, long time. Milk thistle dandelion, another one of my favorites, that milk thistle dandelion right there. It's a great one. When I travel, I tend to break out. Lack of sleep, poor diet, stress, right? So milk thistle dandelion is one that I always go to for when I have skin issues. Whenever I feel I'm breaking out or any type of, a rash or anything, typically it can be traced back to my liver. There's something going on. My diet's not doing well. My liver is just not functioning at peak performance. So milk thistle has a constituent in there called silymarin, and silymarin is this cool little antioxidant that helps protect the liver. So the liver is the filter of the body, and in a perfect body, you're filtering out 100% of those foreign parts or toxins, whatever it is, and you're excreting those all out. But that's not always the case. What can happen is those toxins can be absorbed into the liver. And so what silymarin does is it helps protect those hepatic cells, basically forming a barrier so that those toxins aren't absorbed but excreted. And then we've got some really cool traditional bitters like dandelion, burdock, and artichoke, again, all grown on our farm. Those bitters are going to help stimulate the liver, right? So the liver is the organ that produces bile, and then it goes into your gallbladder, and then as needed, your gallbladder releases that into your digestive tract, typically with food. So that's why it's always really important to have a bitters when you're eating, because that's what your body needs to function properly. So a bitter in your diet is going to tell your body, hey, there's food coming, release digestive enzymes into your digestive tract to help break down that food. So we always recommend taking milk thistle dandelion with some food, because if you don't have food in your stomach and you start releasing those digestive enzymes, that's where you get that upset stomach. So just keep that in mind. We talked about Liver Love, that biodynamic version of our milk thistle dandelion. Over here, you can see what that milk thistle looks like. You see that photo? I was talking about how tall they get. They can get really tall, those plants. If you guys have ever seen a thistle plant, they look almost exactly the same. The milk thistle gets its name because of those little white lines in the leaves. You can see the little white lines in those leaves, and that's where it gets its name, milk thistle, right? So This is a big field of burdock up here. Yellow dock is another traditional bitter. It's a new product for us. It's awesome because along with being a traditional bitter helping with digestion, it's also a natural, I say laxative, but not a laxative in the sense that you take it and you feel like you're gonna have to go to the bathroom. A natural laxative like yellow dock is helping keep things moving. The whole point of your digestive tract is to keep things going through there, absorb what you need, and then get it out. You don't want stuff sitting still, because that's where you start getting the stomach cramps and the pain and all that good stuff. So yellow dock is just helping keep things moving throughout the body. You can see some more photos. That's burdock up there. Burdock is a traditional Japanese herb. It's actually very common in Japanese diet. They use burdock for in culinary purposes. Burdock's often used in like creams and shampoos, conditioners, stuff like that, but it's also really good internally helping with the skin. Artichoke, you guys all know what that looks like. Dandelion up there, and then that's what milk thistle looks like when it's ready to harvest. So those green and white leaves turn just about brown when it's time to harvest, because that's right before the seed starts dropping. Oregon grown valerian. You guys are actually getting a muscle relax. That's an awesome combo: valerian, hops, and skullcap. Skullcap, literally just how it sounds. It's putting a cap on your skull. It's going to help block out that noise. It's a great stress reducing herb. Valerian, I worked in customer service for about a decade, maybe 12 years. So I answered a lot of customer service calls, and we would get quite often folks asking or making the claim that muscle relax or sleep better or valerian, they think it's gone rancid because of the smell. So do keep that in mind. Valerian has a very pungent smell. I oftentimes hear it referred to as old dirty gym socks. But that's actually, the smell isn't anywhere near the taste. The taste is actually, it's high in polysaccharides as well, so it has a really nice sweet flavor to it. Tastes really good to me. Maybe not to you guys. I've heard in the past that if something tastes good, it's probably because your body needs it, right? So sleep's iffy for me, so valerian tastes great. You can see those beautiful roots right there. And actually, I would tell people, when you smell, what you're smelling is the oils released by that root. And that just means that that herb is alive. And I always encourage folks when they try any of our products, take a sniff of it, because that's fresh herb. There's a reason that you get those smells, why it's so pungent, why when you open a bottle you can smell it across the room, is because of the freshness. And that's really key to all this. And these herbs have a lot of vital constituents that are great for us, but if we're ingesting old or dead or just maybe not very healthy plants, it's not working. So there's a reason for it, and it's actually a good thing. So we have some new items here. So my whole life we've been doing herbs, but for the last, I would say 7 years, we've been developing a vitamin line. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that goes into new products, that ashwagandha over there, and especially this vitamin line, because we are very strict, right? We want it to be organic, no fillers, no fluorine agents, nothing in those other ingredients. It's got to be a very clean, whole plant, whole fruit, whole vegetable vitamin line. And the reason that we want it to be whole is because synthetics, for the longest time it was, who could put the most milligrams on the front of the bottle, right? 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C, 100,000 milligrams of vitamin C. But really what's important is how much you're absorbing. And when you're ingesting a bunch of synthetics, your body's not registering that, hey, this is vitamin C, we need to absorb it. It's just passing right through and getting excreted out. So a lot of these vitamins these days, these multivitamins, synthetic vitamins, your body's not registering what they are, and it's not working. So we came out with a line of whole food vitamins, and when you flip around to the back, and take note of those other ingredients, just the capsule and nothing else. But what you're going to find is these are whole plant sourced vitamins. So like our zinc over there, derived from guava leaves, and guava leaves are really high in zinc. And what's really cool about guava leaves is they're low in phthalates, and those are a absorption reducing part of the plant. So they're oftentimes found in seeds, and they can be found in fruits like the guava plant or the guava fruit. But those leaves don't contain those phthalates, and they help, or they don't prevent the absorption of the zinc. All of these vitamin lines contain a microbiome supporting blend, and so it's going to have like reishi in there, astragalus. These are gut herbs, basically good for the gut, right? So we put in a microbiome supporting blend that's going to help with absorption and also help with your digestive tract. So each one of these have that. The vitamin D, that's derived from algae. Our vitamin C, amla fruit, Indian gooseberry. Biotin is a sesbania leaf, and that's a really high biotin producing plant, and something I take on a regular is the biotin, and the vitamin D as well. I've actually been taking these quite often. We just came out with these. We're really excited because they're whole plant, whole food sourced vitamins, and your body is going to register what it is, you know. So again, we don't have the 10,000 milligrams of something, but what we do have is vitamins that will be fully absorbed in the body, and that's so important. The final here is, so this is our Demeter certification. We talked about biodynamic, USDA certified. Oregon Tilth is our certifying body under the USDA for organic. NSF, we're Good Manufacturing Practices certified. We're salmon safe. SQF is a food safety certification, so it's kind of just a step above the Good Manufacturing Practices certification. And SGS is our non-GMO certifying body, but also keep in mind if it's organic, it has to be non-GMO as well. And I believe that is the end of the show here. Oh yeah, I think we've got questions coming right now.
Hi. I heard you say on a lot of the vitamins you should take it with food and everything.
Yes.
Does it matter if you take it with food in the morning versus like after dinner?
Well, it depends. It depends on the herb. You don't want to take something that's going to be, you know, for energy after dinner. But you know, it's quite honestly, I typically take them in the morning with a little bit of food. But it really doesn't matter unless the type of the herb, you know.
What if you take a lot of medications in the morning? I did some reading that I shouldn't take vitamins within 2 hours of my prescription drugs.
There is certain, like first thing that pops in my head is slippery elm, marshmallow. These tend to line coat the lining of your digestive tract, and what will happen is they'll start blocking absorption. So there are certain herbs, but not all of them. You know, like ashwagandha, that can be taken with, you know, and obviously talk to your doctor. But there are certain herbs, and they tend to be gut supporting herbs, like your slippery elm and your marshmallow, that you don't want to take with other medication.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah.
So do you guys do any no-till gardening?
No-till gardening. No, we till everything, especially on that side of the mountain. We've got to till. Our soil is so hard. I mentioned some of the hurdles going from the valley, the west side of the mountain, to the east side of the mountain. And a big one was the soil, completely different soil composition. So we've got to till, or we couldn't even do any planting in our soil without tilling over on this side of the mountain. Absolutely.
Anyone else?
Any other questions?
People living on a farm?
Yeah, absolutely, a compost. And we've got the chickens too. They're great composters. So we've got, when I grew up, you had the bucket that you put all your scraps into, but we do compost like crazy for on the farm as well.
Right here, Dylan.
Yeah.
My question was that one product it contains the alcohol, the grape, and then
Yes.
the other doesn't. So
Yes.
what does the other one contain to extract it, and like what would be the benefits or negatives to take one or the other?
So the glycerin is palm derived glycerin, and then grape alcohol. And really the big difference between these, because they are the same ashwagandha, is the absorption. Because the glycerin, that palm glycerin, the alcohol free, is an alcohol, it has to go to the small intestines before it'll actually be absorbed. Whereas with the alcohol base, it'll absorb in the stomach. So your absorption rate, that's really the biggest difference.
I
Absolutely.
want to remind you that November 15th, I'll be doing a talk on managing colds, coughs, and flus. The sign-up sheet is out on the table. And I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank our guests. Dylan, you did a beautiful job. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming
And
out.
thanks for coming. And if you have questions, we'll be circulating out on the floor. At least I will be. Some of our other associates will be. Thank you very much for coming.